I'm going to share 9 millionaire habits that changed my life that you could use to change your life for the better too. Hi friends, I'm John and welcome to my brand new channel where I cover topics on building wealth, personal finance, investing, and business, but not Dogecoin. Just kidding, I may very well sometime cover Dogecoin, like how amazingly secure its network is, how mining it isn't a total waste of energy since there's such a limited coin supply, and even how one of the smartest people in the world constantly trolls, raves, about its utility all over Twitter. Okay, jokes aside, let's dive into millionaire habits. Now, habits are an interesting thing when you really get to understanding them. Your life today is essentially entirely shaped by your habits, the good and the bad. Now, here's the good news. Creating positive change isn't as hard as you think. So before we dive into these habits, I'd like to share 3 very helpful action items that will assist you in actually applying them. Number 1, start small with these habits. When you start small, you're not relying on motivation. Motivation is an incredibly inefficient fuel for taking action, and waiting for it is counterproductive to productivity. And when you start small, it doesn't require motivation. It just requires a prompt. And that is tip number 2. Create prompts for yourself, little reminders to take action on a new habit that you want to adopt. When I was trying to get better at meditating in the morning, I would write the word meditate on our lemons in the kitchen because I was already in the habit of drinking lemon water every single morning after I woke up. And those meditation lemons served as my prompt to meditate for at least 2 minutes. I started small so it wasn't painful, and so I didn't need to rely on motivation or willpower. But eventually, 2 minutes a day turned into 15 minutes. The third tip for getting the most out of these millionaire habits we're about to dive into is to adopt what's called the never miss twice principle. And full credit to James Clear for this tip. He's the author of an awesome book called Atomic Habits. The idea is that instead of having an all or nothing mentality, you simply commit to being consistent. If you miss one day, you never miss a second in a row. And if you do that, research shows that your long-term progress will be just as effective. Consistency over perfection. Okay, so with these action items in mind, let's dive into some millionaire habits that can change your life in incredibly positive ways. And by the way, this list will not include some of the more obvious habits like eating healthy or reading books or getting good sleep or hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss my next video. I feel like these are the more obvious things, and I always want to do my best to give you perspective on things that are a little deeper than what's obvious. All right, let's dive in. Now, the first habit is to study how successful people think. I found that how somebody thinks is much more responsible for a person's success than anything else. A couple years back, I spent some time in person with a billionaire, and someone who we were with asked him, "What's your morning routine?" And he looked down for a second and he paused, and then he looked back up and he said, rather than be concerned about how anyone spends the first couple hours of their day, I suggest you be more curious about how they think. What kind of mindset do they have? It was one of those eyebrow-raising moments where you just kind of nod in amazement how simple yet profound an idea or a principle is. See, oftentimes it's a person's way of thinking that offers you a new perspective that can shift your entire life. A productive morning routine is quite simple, but discovering new ways of thinking from successful people who have come before you is a whole nother level. Now, a great way to discover the mindsets of how someone who you might look up to thinks is through reading their autobiographies, reading books that they've written, watching documentaries about them, and even if they're still alive, checking out their personal blogs if they have one. And what's really cool is that it doesn't take much studying of the greats to come away with some new ways of thinking that can shift your entire world for the better. And so I would encourage you to dedicate a bit of time into your day or week to exploring the mindsets and ways of thinking of some of those people you look up to. The second habit is to produce more than you consume. And when you do consume, consume intentionally. Now look, I'll be the first to admit I enjoy a nice movie night with the family, getting down on some YouTube videos and topics that interest me. And every weekend, my 9-year-old son and I hop on our PCs and we get down on some gaming time. But quite frankly, when you compare the time that I'm personally consuming, like watching TV, playing video games, or scrolling social media, to the time that I'm spending on activities that produce income or produce some sort of contribution to a goal that I have, I can tell you confidently that it is absolutely weighted to producing. And millionaires who I know will say the same thing about themselves. start producing and start creating and building things, because doing so is the only way you'll end up with some sort of result, either one that pays off or one that teaches you valuable lessons on how to move forward. Not to mention, when you're producing or creating, it releases all kinds of happy hormones like dopamine or serotonin, which act like fuel for creating new ideas or taking action and for driving your goals forward. And again, when you start to consume for fun or entertainment, just do so with intention and awareness. If you need to decompress, like, that's cool. I get it. I do it too. The key is to just be conscious of it and maybe set time limits around it so you don't go overboard. And a great way to start improving on this habit is to track how you spend every hour of your day. Just note your daily activity for a week and then see how much of your time is spent producing versus consuming. Then with that information, little by little, remember, start small, start replacing the times that you typically consume with activities that produce. The third habit is to take notes and keep a journal. The wealthiest people I know are constantly writing things down, reflecting on conversations, on things that they learn, on new ideas, on their goals, on their goal progress, and even challenges that they're going through. I mean, you name it. Writing things down allows you to better retain the things that pass in everyday life, and they also allow you to more deeply reflect on them, both in the moment while you're writing them down, and then also in the future when reviewing your notes. Honestly, it is incredible what I find in my journals when I look back on them. And in addition to that, I'm constantly referring back to my notes, almost on a daily basis, which do, by the way, exist in both physical format as a journal and then also through cloud-based apps that make it easy to digitally capture things on the fly and when I'm on the go. If you're not journaling, a great way to start is by simply writing one sentence down every day. It could be a thought, it could be a reflection, a feeling, an idea, really, it could be anything. But if you do that enough, I guarantee that you'll make it part of your everyday life and it will contribute to your success. Okay, fourth habit, getting good at consistently setting goals and minding the process for achieving them. I know this one sounds typical and we may even get a little rah-rah here for a second, but hear me out on it. The late and great Jim Rohn once said, and I quote, "The real value in setting goals is not in their achievement. The acquisition of the things that you want is strictly secondary. The major reason for setting goals is to compel you to become the person it takes to achieve them." See, goals are the markers for what you want to achieve in life. But have you ever thought about what kind of person you'll have to become in order to achieve all that you desire? Everybody wants the goals, but who's the kind of person that actually hits them, right? What philosophies and traits and beliefs and principles do they adopt? This is a deep question, I know, and I'd venture to say not everyone who has become a millionaire has considered this. But those who have, as it relates to their goals, are likely living a much more fulfilled life and one that's way more aligned to really tapping their potential. Getting good at consistently setting goals and minding the process for achieving them means that you'll inevitably have to come face to face with who you'll need to become in order to achieve all that you want. Now, the fifth habit is actually one recommended by fellow YouTuber Graham Stephan, and so I've got to give full credit to him. And what he says is,
"The most successful people that I've seen all have a way of making their money invisible."
Now, this is a good one because on your way up, as you earn more money, it can be tempting to also notch up your lifestyle. And while it's cool to enjoy the fruits of your labor, just don't be premature about it. Know the difference between an asset and a liability and find ways to park your money in investments that aren't so easy to cash out of. Things like moving your crypto into cold storage or investing in real estate or investing in a business. Just get it out of your accounts so that you don't see it there, which will help you avoid the temptation to spend the money as you make it. And this way, you become more wealthy every single day instead of stagnant or even worse, less wealthy every single day. Okay, habit number 6 is having an ever watchful eye of who you surround yourself with. Now, a lot of people don't credit the quote properly, but it was Jim Rohn, again, who said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it goes even deeper than that. 2 professors from Harvard did some digging into a 20-year-long study called the Framingham Heart Study, and they found that the relationship between people's happiness extends up to 3 degrees of separation. So basically, that means your friend's friend's friend can have an impact on your happiness. There's a certain emotional contagion that spreads from those who you might not even spend much time with, and as it turns out, even those who you might not even know, which makes sense if you think about it, because your friend's friend's friend, they can directly affect the friend before him, and then that friend can affect the friend who you are directly connected to, who can obviously directly affect you. And I found there's been this certain natural tendency for me to distance myself from people who limit themselves and then who try to spread that limitation onto others. But everyone has to consciously make the decision to remove those people from our inner circles and associate with those who have healthy mindsets, who think big, and who want to achieve success and great things and ultimately become better people. So again, have an ever watchful eye on who you surround yourself with. And by the way, if you'd like to read that study, it's fascinating. I recommend you check it out. I'll just leave a link down in the description below. Number 7 is to place value on your time. And if you haven't done so, then you really should. An easy formula for doing this is to take how much money you're bringing in personally every year and divide that by 2,000, which is around the number of hours a typical person works here in the US, assuming a 40-hour work week. Now, this is the minimum amount that your time is worth on an hourly basis. And if you close deals on a per project basis, if you get paid to speak on stages and stuff like that, then your math will need to be dividing that total amount earned on your projects by the time it takes for you to complete the project from start to finish. Now, with this number in mind, think about the tasks you're doing and whether or not they're really worth your time. And if you're in grind and hustle mode, like I get it, sometimes there's a sacrifice you need to make, but knowing this number is still very important because what I'm about to say is true for anyone. You should not be doing $15 an hour jobs when your time is worth $100 or $200 or $400 or more per hour. Obviously, plug in your own numbers there, but you get the gist. Just remember this. There is no limit to how much you can eventually earn unless it's a self-imposed limit. And placing value on your time is one step to removing those limits. Habit number 8 is diversifying your investments and income streams. And lately, there's been a ton of attention on cryptocurrency, and you hear all these stories of people YOLOing into some altcoin, for example, and in some cases with their entire life savings. And every time I hear about this, I cringe a little for that person because the odds are just so stacked against you when you put all the money into just one single asset class. And it's even worse when you only ever hear about the positive stories, like how some dude became a millionaire putting all of his life savings into Dogecoin. But you see, human nature involves certain basic survival instincts, and one of those is self-perseverance in the eyes of the tribe. We essentially desire acceptance because thousands of years ago, you literally had to be part of the tribe in order to survive, and being cast out meant certain death. And that self-perseverance instinct is exacerbated by childhood traumas that may come into effect around the same acceptance issues, right? So what do we humans do, right? Well, we don't share the stories of how we lost money in crypto or on the stock market or in the business, right? Because we don't want to be seen as anything less than our best selves by the community. And so you get this massive imbalance of happy success stories versus losing a bunch of money when it comes to these sorts of non-diversified asset gambles. They're very well aware of the fact that by diversifying their investments and income streams, they're mitigating risk and essentially assuring that their money will grow over time as a whole. It's a habit that requires a mindset shift sometimes, especially for entrepreneurs who are used to being a little more risky in general. It certainly was for me, but it's so important and it's a habit worth applying. Last but not least is habit number 9, and it is building efficiencies to increase time margin. Wealthy people understand that time is finite and it is fleeting. They're constantly looking for ways to build efficiencies in life, whether it's in business or, in investment management practices or how they consume information to learn new things. Their productivity systems, right? It all comes down to having a constant attention placed on increasing time margin so that we can build and grow more, so we can help more people, so we can ultimately experience the freedom that allows us to do what we want. So as you grow your own wealth, don't put off looking for ways to become more efficient with your time. Do everything you can to free up as much time in your life as you can. It will be worth it. And it's a habit that often goes overlooked, especially by entrepreneurs, but it is so incredibly important. Now, there is a hidden 10th habit as a sort of Easter egg somewhere in this video. And I'm curious, did you find it? If so, leave a comment below, but don't say what it is. So if you haven't found it, I'll give you a hint. It is within the first 5 minutes of this video, and it's worth going back and looking for if you did miss it. The key is to implement these into your life right away and to do so through persistent self-discipline. Remember, consistency, not perfection. You got this. All right, that's it for this video. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.